Welcome everybody to Thunderdome Metal Reviews. We are looking at The Work by Rivers of Nihil this week. My name is Gabe Cooper, and I'm here with the Dr. David Pizzo, the Reverend Ben Lindsay, and Tracey, the Chicken Slaughterer Newport. How y'all doing tonight?
I feel like I just get introduced for NPR podcast.
Yeah, because that's how we talk here. This is NPR, except with thrash metal.
NPR.
We're gonna raise funds like all throughout this. Didn't you know that, Tracey?
Oh,
like,
no.
we're gonna just like stop the review, like
Your donations
super
now.
annoying. And
If you donate now, we
if you
won't
donate
ask
now,
for
we'll
another
continue this
donation.
review. If you
So
donate
we're
now,
gonna keep the donation.
I really want that Rivers of Nihil tote bag. So I'm and DVD.
what we should really do though is hold Ben's grade hostage, like unless we get to our goal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we're not going to tell them what his grade is.
Yeah, for real, because we can do that actually. Let's just soak in, for those of you who are watching on the YouTube channel and not listening to us, soak in the majesty of this fucking 1970s era prog rock
It's
album
amazing.
cover. That is just something else. Look at it on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast.
That's a lot.
But yes, this is The Work, released on September 24th of 2021. It is their fourth studio album. It is released on Metal Blade. Brody Utley is the producer. The runtime is 64 minutes and 23 seconds. Rivers of Nihil is Adam Biggs on bass and vocals, Brody Utley on guitars, electric and acoustic, keyboards and programming, Jake Diffenbach on vocals, John Tupor on guitars, Jared Klein on drums and backing vocals. They did bring in some additional musicians for this album: Zach Strauss on saxophone, Grant McFarland on cello, and James Jordan for some additional vocals. And this is Tracey's pick for September.
Yeah, I was going to ask, why'd you pick this, Tracey? And us. Why did this happen?
This happened because I have been very adamant and open about their 2018 album being one of my favorite albums of all time. Like, it's easily top 5. I think it's probably
nice.
my third most listened to albums for this year so far, sitting at like 9 albums and 9 plays. The only one instead of being it is the Oceans Collective, Thinner's Org 1 and 2. Surprise, surprise there.
Not Guar?
Not Guar. God, not Guar. But when I saw they released this album, I was like, fuck yes. Because in fact, for this month, I had 12 Foot Ninja's album in its place.
Which is also good.
To play. And this came out, I was like, nope, I'm going to kick you out. I'm putting this one here for sure.
Oh, shit. I was wondering why that happened. Because that album's nice. It's out now.
Yep.
And
I listened to it Friday morning when I woke up.
I did
when
too.
I saw this out, I was like, oh shit. But that's also an October album. No, it was Ginger what I had in this place instead.
Yeah,
that's
that
what
makes
it
sense.
was. No, because that was.
Who knows? The point is, we'll get to it eventually.
Yes.
Everything's great. Everything's great.
But yeah, so I was like, oh, they're making a new album. Damn right, I'm gonna pick it. And
Why do you, and this is not shade, because I actually happen to like this album too. And I like this whole reading kill yourself scene that apparently is a thing. I don't know what happened in Reading Pennsylvania. I guess deindustrialization. But anyway, why do you like Rivers of, I always want to call it Nihil, but I guess it's Nihil, whatever. Why do you like Rivers of Nihil so much, Tracey?
I think they do a great job of their death metal sound. I think their sound has evolved over their albums. Like I said, their first one, they kind of really, and I got introduced them in their 2018 album, and I've gone back and listened through their first 2 prior to it. And it's like their first one, they didn't really know what the hell they're doing, but it's just kind of there. The second one, they found their sound to a extent, because like they have a very distinct guitar sound, I think, that you don't hear a lot of other places. And they found it in that album, and I think in the third album, they perfected the sound, and they also brought in some proggy elements like the saxophone that really kind of pushed that album over the top. And this one was just good.
Yeah, there's even more sax in Where Owls Know Your Name or whatever. That one was, yeah, Where
Owls Know Your Name. Yeah,
I think that's what it's called. Because I did back up because I'm a weirdo and listen to that album as well.
I tried to get you on the train early on.
I know, but back then you're like, oh, it's proggy and full of weird shit Ben hates. And so I was like, that's a pass.
I don't know about this.
I don't know about this, guys. I don't know. The Black Crown Initiate was the cattle catcher icebreaker on this one, because that sort of gloomy ass, depressing prog death from the industrial Rust Belt of Pennsylvania, like they're in that same space. Indeed, Brett Crown Initiate's first show was at a Rivers of Nihil show. Like that was their first gig, and they're good friends. Reading's not very big, but apparently it produces a fair amount of metal, as I guess the Rust Belt does. Gabe is really the only one of us who, well, I guess Ben, you and Gabe both live in that zone, in the Cleve and Milwaukee. But I don't know, I'm here for it. I mean, I admit I represent more the death side of prog death, much as my politics may be progressive, and sometimes I wanted more of the death in here. I'm not going to lie. I do think Black Crown Initiate is, for me, a little better because it is a bit heavier, but there's some, I would argue, some moments of, if not brilliance, cleverness on here. And Ben is going to tell you, I don't want to spoil it. He mentioned in the last one, the more times he listened to it, the more he felt differently. The more times I listened to it, the more I liked it. So, and I don't always like soundscapey, weird Tracey shit. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But in this case, maybe it's because fall's coming. Maybe it's because I realized the Anthropocene is rolling over us like a fucking giant stone wheel. But and I also have to say, I guess we'll talk about this when we talk about songs, the amount of language and thoughts about therapy, which I think is very unusual for this genre, actually. The amount they engaged with therapy and therapeutic themes surprised me, and it struck me how little of that happens in metal, actually, whether one approves of it or not. I mean, it's like the title itself is straight out of the 12-step program, and it's repeated. They really want you to know because it's in at least 3 of these songs. But so I thought that was an interesting angle that I didn't expect. That is very different than most of the language metal I listen to, where therapy is, I guess, just smashing things. I don't know. That's a form of therapy, but
Yeah. So let's get Gabe's and Ben's thoughts on this
For
before
sure.
I start spewing somewhere on them.
Okay, I didn't have any idea what to expect here, but when I heard that there was going to be saxophone, I was a little bit excited about it. And I actually thought there could have been more saxophone on this
Me too.
record.
Me too.
But the album does make good use of it.
Well, they openly stated, because they were heavy with the sax in their previous album, that they didn't want to become known as the death metal band with a saxophone player.
Of course, because who wants to be known as that? That would be terrible.
At the
Well,
gates.
they didn't want
They
to make it a
already
stick.
are.
But they
They
didn't want to
already
make
are.
it
It's
like
too
a
late.
permanent stick. They were like, hey, we're not just this.
I can understand that. So I guess I wasn't expecting as many clean vocals as there were. That's one thing I wasn't expecting that I came across a lot. And what else? There were some heavy moments on this record, which I quite thoroughly enjoyed. Yeah. I don't know what else to say about the record in general. I didn't really catch on to the concept that you all were talking about, that the work is supposed to be about therapy. The work just sounds like a pretentious title to me, which sounds like the opus, like the major artistic effort that is here by the band. But I guess that's par for the course for me for not listening to the lyrics enough.
Well, their thing was, and they say that this is a concept album. They have not said what the concept is. All they have said is that it is about all the work that you have to put into living your life, which can definitely be read as therapy. I think that David's concept of that is pretty spot on.
I read an interview with, Adam Debe or whatever, the second vocalist and the bassist, where he went track by track and walked us through it, and that is exactly what it's about. It's every one of these tracks is about drugs or therapy or being sad. I mean, it's to the point that different tracks are about different drugs, apparently. That's what he said, Tracey. You're making a face, but I can refer you to the interview.
No, I'm thinking about it in my mind.
It's
And
his word.
He's the primary songwriter for the band.
He is. So I take him at his word.
Yeah.
Tracy, I'd like to hear your thoughts before I get in.
Hear my thoughts for getting to. Well, so I guess get to my spiel. For me, just to kind of put it in comparison of where I place this tied to where owls know my name. I think for me, it's a very similar comparison as Anima and Lateralis is for Tool is for me, where I think Anima has higher highs, but it also has lower lows. And I think Lateralis is the better album overall. And I feel that, and for me, where Owls Know My Name is the Lateralis, where it's the better album overall. But I think there's about 2 or 3 tracks on here that are a lot of tracks on there. There's tracks that are fucking fantastic, but also there's some ones that I'm like, okay, this isn't that good. But the really good ones really weigh in their favor. While when you look at Where Owls Know My Name, I don't think that's so much of an album as a track album. Like if I listen to the album, I'm listening to from start to finish. Like there's not very much I pull off of it to listen to. It just works so well together as a whole. And I think this one's got much more singles in it, but it still works well as an album. One of the things that really drew me to this album was their first single, Clean, came in. And then halfway through it, you hit that like 80s guitar moment to where I feel like would suit perfectly for like the Thor Ragnarok soundtrack. And I was like, all right, I'm fucking here for this album. Regardless of how the rest of it sounds under singles, I'm here for it. And I was kind of hoping they did more of that in the album, but they didn't. But yeah, I think it does start kind of slow though. I think it takes about 3 tracks, and once it hits focus, it really kicks it in high gear, and I think it carries on through the rest of the album, except for More. I think the rest of the album is fantastic.
Yeah, Focus is the headshot. That's every time I listen to it, I was like, oh, this is okay, but oh my god, when that track comes in, it is not to get into songs, but
So I will say initially that I agree with Tracey, that I think that Where Owls Know My Name is a better album than this one. It's just a matter of degrees. And I think that the playing is actually, if you go back and listen to our review of that, I believe that I said in that one, if I didn't, I should have, that the playing was on point. These guys can play their instruments. I think the mixing is bad. I think it's very murky and unclear. I do not like the mix. I think that this is another kind of like The Wheel, where these dudes are in love with their own cleverness and are trying to make a modern The Wall. And we already have The Wall, fuckers. You can make something else. I do not want to belittle the concept, especially the lyrical concept of this album, because I do think therapy is important. I have to remember that these guys are probably in their late 20s, maybe early 30s, so this might be entirely new to them. And they're not an old bitter fuck like me. So this could be really groundbreaking for them and their own life experience and how they're dealing with their traumas and how they're dealing with their battles with addiction. Fair point. I do not give a fuck though, because it's uninteresting to me musically. The saxophone is cool, but so what?
that's some cold shit. I have no retort. Tracey, help us out here. What do we? So what?
I mean,
Tracey?
there's not really a retort. I mean, it's what I was like really looking forward to tonight because like Ben's like, man, so far this album slaps. I'm like, awesome,
dude. But the first listen through, I really enjoyed it. I did, but then like and it's weird. I was listening to it on worse speakers the first time through, and I think that's one of the things is that my problems with the production didn't come through until I was listening through it on better speakers. I was actually stunned by how heavy it was, and I think that's part of the reason that I liked it, because this is a heavy album. I'm not going to. Both lyrically, concepts, and music-wise, this is a very heavy album. It's just, it's one of those things that I was sitting there listening to. I also think it's too long, it being over an hour. We've been over that ad nauseum. That I was just like, there's nothing here to hook me. There's some interesting parts, but none of them really cohere, in my opinion. And every time that I listened to it, I just kept thinking they're trying to be Pink Floyd.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of that is like the theme. Like they have the first track is called The Theme of the Work, and then like it comes back in one of the tracks. I couldn't really hear it in any other of the tracks, but it's like, okay, you want to point out the fact that you've created a motif. You know what I mean? I don't know.
I remember kind of looking at an interview by Adam, and he put his top 5 most influential albums for him on there, and I can't remember 3 of them. I think one of them was a King Crimson, but the 2 I do remember was The Wall by Pink Floyd, and the second one was Colors by Between the Buried and Me, which we covered the redo of that. And so
The
like,
truth comes out.
but outside of the Between the Buried and Me one, all of them were that 70s prog rock.
Yeah, and I think that the album cover really screams that too. But and I think it's a passable version of that. It's just that when I give a grade, I'm not going to give this a bad grade because I don't think it's a bad album in that way. It's just not something that I care to listen to, which is fine. It's not meant for me, and that's cool. I mean, it's got people like Tracey who really love it, and I can see why. I just don't. So we go to tracks, or would you like to give a rebuttal, Tracey?
Well, I
Or
mean,
anyone else?
we've it'd be the same argument we've had on like 80 other episodes. It's just
Right,
like,
yeah.
damn it, Tracey. Just go pick a prog album that I picked previously and listen to that, and you'd have the argument that we'd be having.
Essentially. I'll go first. I don't care for any of these tracks.
Man, like I said previously, once it hits focus and weight, isn't bad. The Tower and Dreamy Black Clockwork are kind of, I even say they're almost filler to me. Like I could have done without them 2 tracks entirely, probably within that and the mix. If those weren't on here, I'd probably give this damn near 100. But they're on there, so it does bring it down. So, and more. But outside of that, like I love every track off of, besides 1, 2, and 7. I love every track off.
You don't like More? That's the death metal song.
Well,
We're
Yeah.
oh, never
seriously.
mind. I always get confused. It's that
What?
that
Adam,
bit
go
at
ahead.
the end of the void from which no sound escapes, to where you have the fans chanting one more song, no more song. I start to kind of like, really, like, why is this here? But yeah, but I mean,
Adam in an interview said, we wrote More because we know our fans want more death metal, but we're not giving it to them. I'm not kidding.
Because
He's
how
like,
can you have any meat if you don't eat your, or how can you have any pudding if you don't eat your meat, Tracey? That's why.
I liked More because I wish more of that were happening on here.
Yeah, me too.
Like I know there was I think there was a little bit more of that on the last album, but
there's
you
a
know,
lot more of that on the last album.
in terms of prog death, I want a little more death. So, but anyway, I'm sorry I interrupted you, Tracey. You were talking about.
No, I was just saying that there's more of more on their last album.
I noticed. I was like, oh, this is good. Yeah, I only listened to it a couple times, but the last one, I mean.
Mm-hmm. But that was it. No,
I've probably listened to them like 15 times. I listen to them a lot.
Yeah. But really, like, it's the first 2, and then kind of like, the first 2 I'm really down on, but the rest of them are really good.
I agree with you. That run from Wait through, I would include More, I think, and I think Episode's quite good, but Focus is fucking badass. That song is so good to me. I think it's amazing. And I like Clean as well, which, as he pointed out, is both about drugs, but about just being poor and how shitty it is in this dumbass society we live in. More is good, and I wish more of it happened. And Tracey, I really disagree with him about his own genre, but he's just wrong. The song is awesome.
Well, More's not bad. It's probably
the transition from 6 to 7.
The transition's really what gets me.
That's fair. And I like Episode as well. I think it's good. Terrestria 4, they said this is the last of these they're going to do. There was one of these in all their albums, and they're like, oh, we're done with this shit. So it's kind of the end of an era for them. So they say, in terms of this 4 seasons.
It makes me wonder if you were to listen to the Terrestria songs.
Yeah, I thought that too. And I only went back, as I said, to one album before this because my stupid ass made us have to record late last week. So we were a little compressed, like by a day. But anyway, I enjoyed this. I didn't like it as much as Portraits of a Doomed Escape, the Black Crown Initiate, but it's a good album. I mean, Tracey sometimes picks some good ones. And this, it was sort of like Black Crown Initiate and The Ocean had a baby. That's how I would describe this, maybe. But I was here for it. It created a soundscape that was grim and grimy. And I really liked all the therapy language because I think we do that too little in metal. Jesus. So I liked that. even though sometimes the 12-step program, I don't know, that's a different podcast. There's some issues there, but I appreciated them engaging with mental health in a way that I think all the albums we do engage with it, but sometimes just in a peeing in a hollowed out skull sort of way. And this actually engaged with it, I think, emotionally. I mean, Tracey, we've reviewed Cannibal Corpse, so before you make that face, but and by we, I mean I made you review Cannibal Corpse. But I was into this. I'm sometimes down on Tracey, but sometimes his ally, and here I'm an ally. So,
Well, I think I'm kind of sandwiched between David and Ben on this one because I wasn't totally turned off by the record, but I didn't like it quite as much as David did. It sounds like I did think that there were a few tracks on here that were really worth re-listening to. I actually like Dreaming Black Clockwork, and the sax is really strong in that one. So I also enjoyed Focus, and also the run of Clean, The Void from Which No Sound Escapes, and more. I think that's a fantastic run, but that is really it. The last 28 minutes of the record are just not really that strong at all. A lot of times I was annoyed by the Clean vocals. The guy has this vocal fry whenever he enters with the singing, and it's just totally insufferable. But other than that, I just found it slowed down a lot. And I think the last thing I would note is that Maybe One Day is very, 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 very upbeat for such a heavy record. You know what I mean? Like heavy in terms of subject matter or heavy in terms of like feeling. It's just poppy and terrible and out of place. The acoustic guitars don't annoy me so much, but I mean, I think that it just doesn't fit very well.
I know I'm being a dead horse here, but I liked that Focus in a way that few songs do, engaged with the issue of what it's like being on Ritalin. I mean, that's what it's about. It's about those medications and what they do to you and what it's done to us needing them. So I'm just going to keep talking about that song because that's one of my favorite songs I've heard in a long time.
They put a really great song together. So I mean, they obviously did focus on that.
It helped them. It helped them. So
They put a great album together.
yeah, I like it. No, I think Gabe Caller. I think he's between me and Ben. I seem to like it a fair amount. Ben could do without it entirely. Gabe's in the middle, and
That's about how all my albums go for Ben now.
well, Gabe liked, not Gabe. Ben likes good prog, but apparently this wasn't good prog. So that's what he always says.
Well, he's going to have the chance to show good prog here in the coming future.
I love that he's sitting there silently staring at us like an owl.
Just go listen to Pink Floyd, and you'll get all this from the source material in a much better way. And that's good prog.
Well, I guess I'm going to fall into sword here and give my grade. I'm going to give it an A. I'm going to give it a 94.
I believe that. Ben, hit us. Let's get the pendulum going.
Like I said, I don't think that this is a terrible album or anything. It's just not something that I would ever listen to again. So I'm going to give it a B- because I think that Where the Owls Know My Name is slightly better than this. And I give that a B. So
you want to do the swing back?
Yeah, sure. I think it's an A-. I don't like it as much as Brett Clown Initiative, which I'm sure I gave an A, and now I'd probably give it an A+. And I've listened to it more, but it creates a cool soundscape. I liked it lyrically. I dig this reading scene. So for me, I'm not quite where Tracey is, but I'm close. It's an A- for me.
And the other swing back.
Totally.
Indeed. So I'm gonna go right along with Ben here. This is not a terrible album by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not A material for me. It's just a B-. And again, I wouldn't listen to the whole thing, but I could see myself returning to a track or two.
Let me see that. But does that put us at a B, Tracey? What's our
It
thunder?
puts us at an A+.
That makes sense. I think it's going to happen a lot where you give it an A, Ben gives it a G-, and it comes out.
And you guys fall and Gabe and
Gabe and I fall to varying degrees in the middle.
Tracey has picked out stuff that I've given D's before, so I think a B- is a win.
I agree. I thought it was going to be worse, so I'll take it. Like as you said, you initially liked it, so hopefully that seems like that's stuck.
And even if I didn't like it. I mean, which I didn't like it, but I recognized the craft that went into it,
For
and I
sure.
recognize that other people like it. It's just not for me, and that's fine. Not everything is. I recognize the amount of work, no pun intended, that they put into crafting a concept album and putting together the soundscape, as you guys
For
mentioned.
sure. When Ben says other people, he means Tracey.
I do mean that is true.
He
In
needs
this
Tracey.
instance, it is Tracy.
He
Other
means
people like
Tracey.
it. Tracy.
Speaking
Tracy
of-
likes it.
Tracy likes it. Speaking of Tracy, what in God's name are we doing next?
Next, we're doing Ben's pick in Kingdom of Sorrow, self-titled album.
Sweet.
Is that the Jamie Johnston
Kirk Weinstein album. Yep.
supergroup? Yeah. Would you call them a
Supergroup is. We can have that discussion
We
on
can
the episode.
save it for the podcast, Tracy. I mean, the subsequent podcast.
All right, it'll be saved.
All right.
It'll be saved.
Well, thank you for listening to us bloviate about this album. I thought I was going to have to get out some lip cream for Tracy, considering how much ass I thought he was going to kiss, but he didn't kiss as much ass as I thought. So join us next time on Thunderdome Metal Reviews.
I've got chapstick handy right here. I don't need no.